Chapter 2, Third Girl, Chapter 2, page 7. The telephone rang. Hercule Poirot did not even seem aware of the fact. It rang with thrill and insistent persistence. George entered the room and stepped towards it, turning a questioning glance towards Poirot. Poirot gestured with his hand. "Leave it," he said. George obeyed, leaving the room again. The telephone continued to ring. The shrill, irritating noise continued. Suddenly it stopped. After a minute or two, however, it commenced to ring again. "Ah," sapristi, "that must be a woman. Undoubtedly a woman." He sighed, rose to his feet, and came to the instrument. He picked up the receiver. "Hallo," he said. Is that Mr. Poirot?" "I, myself. It's Mrs. Oliver. Your voice sounds different. I didn't recognize it at first." "Bonjour, madame. Madame, you are well, I hope." "Oh, I'm all right." Harriet Oliver's voice came through in its usual cheerful accents. The well-known detective story writer and Hercule Poirot were on friendly terms. "It's rather early to ring you up, but I want to ask you a favor." "Yes?" "It's the annual dinner of our detective authors club. I wondered if you would come and be our guest speaker this year." "It would be very sweet of you if you would." When is it? When is this?" "Next month, the 23rd. A deep sigh came over the telephone. "Alice, I'm too old." "Too old? What on earth do you mean? You're not old at all." "You think not?" "Of course not. You'll be wonderful. You can tell us lots of lovely stories about real crimes. And who will want to listen?" "Everyone. Mr. Poirot, is there anything the matter? Has something happened? You sound upset." "Yes, I'm upset. My feelings are, well, no matter. But tell me about it. Why should I make a fuss?" "Why shouldn't you? You'd better come and tell me all about it. When will you come? This afternoon? Come and have tea with me. Afternoon tea, I do not drink it." "Then you can have coffee." "It's not the time of day I usually drink coffee." "Chocolate? With whipped cream on top of, or a tisane? You love sipping tisanes. Or lemonade, or orangeade, or would you like a decaffeinated coffee if I can get it?" Arcano, by example, is an abomination. One of those syrups you like so much, I know. I've got half a bottle of Ribena in the cupboard." "What is Ribena?" "Blackcurrant flavor." "Indeed, one has to hand it to you. You really do try. Madame, I'm touched by your solicitude. I will accept with pleasure to drink a cup of chocolate this afternoon." "Good, and then you tell me all about what's upset you." She went off. Poirot considered for a moment. Then he dialed the number. Presently he said, "Mr. Goby, Harold Poirot here. Are you very fully occupied at this moment?" "Middling," said the voice of Mr. Goby. "Middling to fair. But to oblige you, Monsieur Poirot, if you are in a hurry, as you usually are, well, I wouldn't say that my young man couldn't manage mostly what's on hand at present. Of course, good boys aren't as easy as they used to be. Think too much of themselves nowadays, think they know it all before they've started to learn. But there, can't expect old heads on young shoulders. I'll be pleased to put myself at your disposal, Mr. Poirot. Maybe I can put one or two of the better lads on the job. I suppose it's the usual. Collecting information?" He nodded his head and listened whilst Poirot went into details of exactly what he wanted done. When he had finished with Mr. Gobby, Poirot went up Scotland Yard, where in due course he got through to a friend of his. When he in turn had listened to Poirot's requirements, he replied, "Don't want much, do you? Any murder anywhere, time, place, and victim unknown sounds a bit of a wild goose chase, if you ask me. Oh boy," he added disapprovingly, "you don't seem really to know anything." At 4:15 that afternoon, Poirot sat in Mrs. Oliver's drawing-room, sipping appreciatively at a large cup of chocolate topped with foaming whipped cream, which his hostess had just placed on a small table beside him. He added a small plate full of langue de chat biscuits. Sherry, Madame, what kindness!" He looked over his cup with faint surprise at Mrs. Oliver's coiffure and also at her new wallpaper. Both were new to him. The last time he had seen Mrs. Oliver, her hairstyle had been plain and severe. It now displayed the richness of coils and threads arranged in intricate patterns all over her head. Its prolific luxury was, he suspected, largely artificial. He debated in his mind how many switches of hair might unexpectedly fall off if Mrs. Oliver was to get suddenly excited, as was her wont. As for the wallpaper, these cherries, they're new. They're new? He waved a teaspoon. It was, he felt, rather like being in a cherry orchard. "Are there too many of them, do you think?" said Mrs. Oliver. "So hard to tell beforehand with more paper. Do you think my old one was better?" Poirot cast his mind back dimly to what he seems to remember as large quantities of bright-colored tropical birds in the forest. He felt inclined to remark, "Plus the chained plus Sesame one," but restrained himself. "And now," said Mrs. Oliver, as her guest finally replaced his cup on his saucer and sat back with a sign of satisfaction, whipping remnants of foaming cream from his moustache, "what is all this about?" "That I can tell you very simply. That this morning a girl came to see me. I suggested she might make an appointment. One has one's routine, you comprehend. She sent back word that she wanted to see me at once because she thought she might have committed a murder." "What an odd thing to say. Didn't she know?" "Precisely. So I instructed George to show her in. She stood there. She refused to sit down. She just stood there staring at me. She seemed quite self-witted. I tried to encourage her, then suddenly she said that she had changed her mind. She said she didn't want to be wooed, but that, what do you think? But that I was too old." Mrs. Oliver hastened to utter soothing words. "Oh, well, girls are like that. Anyone over 35 they think is half dead. They've no sense. Girls, you must realize that." "It wounded me," said Hercule Poirot. "Well, you shouldn't worry about it if I were you. Of course, it was a very rude thing to say. That does not matter, and it is not only my feeling. I am worried. Yes, I am worried." Well, I should forget all about it if I were you," advised Mrs. Oliver comfortably. "You do not understand. I am worried about that girl. She came to me for help, then she decided that I was too old to be of any use to her. She was wrong, of course. That goes without saying. And then she just ran away. But I tell you, that girl needs help. I don't suppose she does really," said Mrs. Oliver soothingly. Girls make a fuss about things. No, you're wrong. She needs help. You don't think she really has committed murder? Why not? She says she had. Yes, but Mrs. Oliver stopped. You said she might have, she said slowly. But what can she possibly mean by that? Exactly. It does not make sense. Who did she murder? Or did she think she murdered? Porridge shrugged his shoulders. And why did she murder anyone? Someone? Again, Porridge shrugged his shoulders. Of course, it could be all sorts of things. Mrs. Oliver began to brighten as she set her ever-prolific imagination to work. She could have run over someone in her car and not stopped. She could have assaulted by a man on a cliff and struggled with him and managed to push him over. She could have given someone the wrong medicine by mistake. She could have gone to one of those purple pills parties and had a fight with someone. She could have come to and found she had stabbed someone. Madame S. But Mrs. Oliver was well away. She might have been a nurse in an operating theatre and administered the wrong anesthetic, or she broke off suddenly, anxious for clearer details. What did she look like? Porridge considered for a moment. An Ophelia devoid of physical attraction. Oh dear, Mrs. Oliver, I can almost see her when you say that. How queer. She is not competent, said Porridge. That is how I see her. She is not one who can cope with difficulties. She is not one of those who can see beforehand the dangers that must come. She is one of whom others would look around and say, we want a victim, that one will do. But Mrs. Oliver was no longer listening. She was clutching her rich coils of hair with both hands in a gesture with which Porridge was familiar. Wait, she cried in a kind of agony. Wait. Porridge waited, his eyebrows raised. You didn't tell me her name, said Mrs. Oliver. She did not give it. Unfortunately, I agreed with you. Wait, and implored Mrs. Oliver again with her same agony. She relaxed her grip on her head and uttered a deep sigh. Hair detached itself from its bonds and tumbled over her shoulders. A super-imperial coil of hair detached itself completely and fell on the floor. Porridge picked it up and put it discreetly on the table. Now then, said Mrs. Oliver, suddenly restored to calm. She pushed in a hairpin or two and nodded her head while she thought. Who told this girl about you, Mr. Porridge? No one. So far as now I know, unfortunately. She had heard about me, no doubt. Mrs. Oliver thought that naturally was not the word at all. What was natural was that Pirate himself was sure that everyone had always heard of him. Actually, large numbers of people would only look at you blankly if the name of Hercule Poirot was mentioned, especially the younger generation. But how am I going to put that to him? Thought Mrs. Oliver, in such a way that it won't hurt his feelings. I think you're wrong, she said. Girls and young men, they don't know very much about detectives and things like that. They don't hear about them. Everyone must have heard about Hercule Poirot, said Poirot supportedly. It was an article of belief for Hercule Poirot. But they are also badly educated nowadays, said Mrs. Oliver. Really, the only people whose names they know are pop singers or groups or disc jockeys, that sort of thing. If you need someone special, I mean a doctor or detective or dentist, well then, you would ask who's the right person to go on, and then the other person say, oh my dear, you must go to that absolutely wonderful man in Queen Anne Street. Twist your legs 3 times. Round your head and you are cured. Or All my diamonds were stolen and Henry would have been furious, so I couldn't go to the police. But that's a simply uncanny detective, most discreet, and he got them back for me and Henry never knew a thing. That's the way it happens all the time. Someone sends that girl to you. I doubt it very much. You wouldn't know until you were told, and you are going to be told now. It's only just come to me. I sent that girl to you. Paul stared. You? But why did you not say so at once? Because it's only just come to me. When you spoke about Ophelia, long wet-looking hair and rather plain, it seemed a description of someone I had actually seen quite lately, and then I came to me who it was. Who is she? I don't actually know her name, but I can easily find out. We were talking about private detectives and private eyes, and I spoke about you and some of the amazing things you had done, and you gave her my address? No, of course, I didn't. I had no idea she wanted a detective or anything like that. I thought we were just talking. But I had mentioned the name several times, and of course it would be easy to look you up in the telephone book and just come along. Were you talking about that murder? Not that I can remember. I don't even know how we came to be talking about detectives unless, yes, perhaps it was she who started the subject. Tell me then, tell me all you can, even if you do not know her name. Tell me all you know about her. Well, it was last weekend. I was staying with the Lorimas. They don't come into it except that they talk me over to some friends of theirs for drinks. There were several people there, and I didn't enjoy myself much because, as you know, I don't really like drink.